There are a couple of specific combinations of letters in Sanskrit which are pronounced in different ways depending on how one is taught or depending on one's individual preference. And there are acceptable variations, we can say, on the pronunciation of some of these. And I'm talking about those that are listed here in this section called acceptable variations. Most notably, this combination of the English letter H followed by the English letter M, which is found commonly in the Sanskrit word Brahma. Now notice how I'm saying Brahma, even though what's written, if you look closely what's written there, what's written is actually Brahma. See, Brahma is what's written there. The H comes before the M, Brahma. But what I'm saying is Brahma. And you've heard me say this before in previous examples that I've given. I've been calling it Brahma. Why am I calling it Brahma when it's clearly written Brahma? The reason is because that's tradition. It has just become acceptable over the years to say it that way because that's the way most Indians say it. They say Brahma, reversing the pronunciation of the H and the M, even though it's written Brahma. Now, the technically correct pronunciation is probably Brahma, as written. And in fact, I have heard some very scholarly Sanskrit professors and Vedic pundits pronounce it as Brahma. And that's technically correct. There's nothing wrong with that pronunciation, but that's not the way most Indians pronounce it. Most of them will say Brahma. Why? Maybe because it's easier that way. Maybe it's just become the accepted way to do it because everyone does it that way. Anyway, both are acceptable. You can choose whichever one you want, but the most common and probably even I would have to say the preferred way of saying it is Brahma, to say the H after the M, because it's a little bit easier to say it that way. So I think that's why it's become preferred. But I'm not going to say it's technically better or more correct. I think the as written is actually probably technically correct. Examples, here's this is what they call the Yajna mantra, or the before meals prayer, or maybe it's referred to by other names. I think it's a verse from chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, actually. And I'm going to say it, I'll try to say it, normally I will pronounce it with the, as I was saying, the Brahma pronunciation, reversing the H and the M. So if I do that and say it the way most Indians would say it, then I'll say Brahmarpanam Brahmavir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva tena gantavyam Brahmakarma samadhina. I'll do it one more time. Brahmarpanam Brahmavir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva tena gantavyam Brahmakarma samadhina. Now, notice I am not putting any extra time whenever I encounter a space between words. I'm completely ignoring them just because, as I mentioned before, that's what you should do whenever you're chanting or singing Sanskrit. You ignore the spaces. The space between words does not mean you should add a pause between the words. It just means it's two different words, but you ignore it for the purposes of chanting. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm as if I'm scrunching each of these lines into one long word each time. And that's what you should do as well. Now let me try it one time to say it as written with the h preceding the ma. Then it would be Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva tena gantavyam Brahmakarma samadhina. I believe that was correct. Anyway, both those versions are acceptable. Now the same kind of thing happens when you see H followed by N, the English letter N as in no. It's identical. The most common way of pronouncing that is to pronounce the N first followed by the H. As in this example, where's the Sanskrit example here? Om Vanhimandalavasinyaye namaha. Om Vanhimandalavasinyaye namaha. Om Vanhimandalavasinyaye namaha. I'm pronouncing the N before the H in the word Vanhi. That's the more common pronunciation and perfectly acceptable. If you want to pronounce it as written, then you would say Om Vahni Mandalavasinyaye namaha. Om Vahni Mandalavasinyaye namaha. That's also correct. Pronouncing as written is always correct. So you can choose, but I do recommend whatever style you choose that you try to be consistent in whatever your choice is.